Okay. Boker Tov officially. I'm gonna already put the Mishne on the screen. Okay. Okay. We'll start. Good morning, everybody. On this Erev Shabbat and Erev Pesach. I hear it's coming up. That's what I hear. It's been in all the papers. Baruch Hashem. Okay, this Mishnah that's in front of you, Mishnah either Yud or Tet or Chet. Again, because of different printings and different versions, it depends which number it is. But I've broken it down here into two parts. Last week we did the first part. Today we'll get to the second part. But I have two comments on the first. I'm going to reread the first part and a couple comments. One that's coming from Mesilat Yesharim and one that's going to come from Rav Lau. Rabbi Chanina ben Dos Omer, Kol shirat chet'o kodemet lechokmato. Whoever their yirat Hashem, yirat shamayim, yirat chet, their fear, quote unquote, we discussed that last time, of sin, comes before their chokhmah, before their wisdom, chokhmato mitkayemet, then their wisdom endures. V'chol shechokhmato kodemet yirat cheto, but the more that his wisdom comes first, and only then comes his yirat chet, ein chokhmato mitkayemet, his wisdom does not endure, is not enduring. So we talked about all kinds of meanings about this, and we're going to deal with a question that Rav Lau asks. I'm going to read the question, and before I read his answer, I'm going to read something from the Siyat Sharim. I didn't make a slide for this. It's short. Ketzad yeda adam mima lira imein biado chokhmah. He asked a very simple question. We sort of asked this last week in closing, but I ask it again. It says that your atchet, your fear. I'm going to use the term fear of doing a sin in the simplistic term. If that doesn't come first, or if it comes before your chokhmah, before your knowledge and your wisdom, then your wisdom's going to endure. So he asks a very simple question. If you don't know what to be afraid of, then how are you going to have your atchet? Meaning, it says, oh, your atchet has to be first, and then your chokhmah. But you need the chokhmah to have your atchet. You need the wisdom. I have to tell you what you do wrong or how to do it right, and then you can have the yirat chet. So he doesn't understand the order. He says, how can a person distance himself from chet, from doing a sin? When he doesn't know what the sin is. And what is the meaning behind the chet? Now he's going to give an answer, but before he does, he doesn't quote Mesilat Yesharim, but what he says is very similar to something at the very beginning of Mesilat Yesharim. He says like this, Umashamar Shlomo, this is what Shlomo said. Today we learn, as always, reminded by the fact I'm using the Mesilat Yesharim that was made specifically in his memory. Again, so this is what Shlomo HaMelech said. If you will seek out it, meaning mitzvot, and Torah, and chokhmah, as tavin yirat Hashem, then you will understand what yirat Hashem is, the fear of Hashem. Eino omer, it doesn't say if you seek it out, tavin philosophia, tavin tchuna, tavin refuah. It doesn't say that if you seek out wisdom, you'll understand medicine, you'll understand philosophy and engineering, or but rather, if you seek out chokhmah, you seek out wisdom, then you'll understand yirat Hashem. Therefore, you have to understand. You have to seek out yirat Hashem. You have to go after it. Now, how does that fit in with us? So let me read you the answer that Rav Lau gives, and then we'll move on. Hatshuva, an answer. Ulam kedei chokhmah tavi lidei yirah. In order for chokhmah to bring a person to the point of yirat Hashem and yirat chet, tzarich adam latziv lo et yirat chet kematara. Sorry, you have to set yirat chet as your goal. Od beterem rachash chokhmah, even before you acquired knowledge. I'm going to read one more sentence, and then I'll explain. Kedei shalimud lo yeh be'enei adam kelimud chokhmah greida. Just so that the learning should not be in the end of itself. That's the whole goal, is just to learn or to acquire knowledge. I love this. He has to set aside or set himself a goal, which is yirat chet. It's yirat chet. Now, what does this mean? The question was, how can you say, let's say for some example, someone becomes religious, they didn't know anything about Shabbat and Kashrut, and you say, okay, you got to be afraid, you got to be careful not to do anything wrong. Well, you didn't tell me what to do wrong, what to do right yet. So the point he's trying to make here, Rav Lau, is that it says here that your chet has to come first and has to be before your chokhmah. But again, how is that possible? He says the yirat chet means that's your goal. You have to set that up. Your goal is not chokhmah. Your goal is not just acquiring with knowledge. In other words, I can learn the entire Shulchan Aruch, and no, I don't know it backwards and forwards by heart. I've learned it all, but I can't remember it all by heart. But let's say that's my goal, to learn it all by heart. That's a nice goal. But what's it going to do for me if I don't keep kosher, I don't keep Shabbat, I don't put a mezuzah? It doesn't mean anything. It's totally shema, but not necessarily going to do anything for me. So he said your yirat chet has to be the goal. That when you learn, it's because you want to put it into practice and make sure you don't do something wrong, which we're going to see somewhat in the second half of this particular Mishnah, which we're going to look at now also. Let's take a look at the second half. Hu Omer, Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa used to say also, Kol shema'asav merubim michochmato. Whoever's actions are greater than his knowledge, chochmato mitkayemet. His chochmah will endure. V'chol shechochmato meruba mima'asav, and whoever's knowledge is greater than his actual actions, ein chochmato mitkayemet. His chochmah will not endure. So I'm going to put this in the simplest meaning of what this says. Okay, let's say, for example, and I'll just use numbers because we can quantify it. Let's say I learn 300 things, but I only do 10 of them. So that chokhmah, that wisdom will not last. And we'll see why in a few minutes. But if I learn 100 things and I do 200 things, then it's going to that's going to bolster my chokhmah and it's going to make it endure. Okay, that's the general meaning of this particular Mishnah. So let's talk a little bit now and understand what really is going on here. I said that if you learned about 100 things, but you did 200, then that's going to help you. But that doesn't make any sense when you think about it, because how can you do something that you don't know about, right? How do you do more than you know? You could say, oh, I'll do it by accident. Like, I don't necessarily know that there's 39 things you shouldn't do on Shabbat. I know 3 of them. But I didn't by just sitting at home and sitting in my house. I didn't do the other 36. It's not what I'm talking about. When the Bnei Yisrael said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen, it didn't mean that they were going to do things before they even heard about it, because that doesn't make any sense either. So, okay, we're going to do everything, and then we'll listen about it. Well, what are you going to do? So what does Na'aseh v'nishma mean? It meant that they were ready to do anything that they would hear about. That's what it meant. Therefore, they got very great sachar for that. And the same thing is going on here. If a person says, I'm ready to be Mekayim, everything to keep, everything the Torah demands of me, Hashem sees it as if he's done it. And I'll explain that in a second. So therefore, his ma'asim, his potential, his actions, far outweigh his current knowledge, because it's as if he's already doing them. So what does that mean? It's as if he's already doing them. So there's an expression that we've come across a few times in different areas, especially when we learn Tanya, which is that machshava tova, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa l'maaseh. I've mentioned this many times in classes, that good intentions, Hashem connects them as if they did an actual action. So what does that mean? So if I wake up in the morning, I say, I hope to give 1,000,000 shekel to tzedakah today. Okay, unless someone drops 1,000,000 shekel in my hand, right? I can't give 1,000,000 shekel to tzedakah. So that's not really, my intention is to give it. So Hashem says, it's as if he gave 1,000,000 shekel. But if I wake up in the morning, I say, I'm going to go in the hospital and visit someone who was sick. And something came up and I couldn't go, or I go and there's hafganah, there's a demonstration, the light rails closed down. In that case, Hashem says, you plan to do it, it's as if you did it. So in a sense, what we're saying here is that when I look at Torah, it's similar to the first half of this Mishnah. When I look at Torah and say, look, I want to do exactly what our ancestors did, and I guess theoretically our neshamot did also, by Har Sinai and said, Na'aseh v'nishma. We are going to do it and we will listen, meaning whatever is demanded of us, as I learn it, I will, of course, I'm going to do it. My intention is to do the best I can. Therefore, Hashem says, it's ki'ilu you've done it. You still have to do it. I can't wake up and say, oh, I plan to put on tefillin today for sure, for sure. I'm going to definitely do it. And Hashem says, okay, it's like you did it. Now you go back to sleep. It doesn't work that way. You still have to do it. We're talking about when you get interrupted, something happens and stops you from doing it. It's also as if you did it. Another answer, another possible way to look. When your chokhmah causes you to do mitzvot, what happens? The chokhmah is the reason for your actions. It's caused you to do it. So the more I know, the more I can do. There is a big mistake that people make when they're either becoming religious or were religious, went away, and come back. And it also is a big mistake that people make around Yom Kippur and make a decision that starting tomorrow, I'm going to do everything perfectly. The problem is that they decide they're going to take on everything at one time. When a person converts, when a person becomes religious, when a person returns to the religion, if they left, so to speak, it is a recipe for disaster to say from day one they're going to do everything. It doesn't work that way. So if someone decides they're going to start to become religious, they were never religious in their life. So maybe if it's a guy, tell them put on tzitzit and put on tefillin, and maybe say Shema, and maybe start working on kosher, and then working towards Shabbat and building. If you do all of it at one time, it's likely to fall. It can be done, but it's likely it's not going to work very well. It's called Bahadraga in stages. Do it in stages. When your ma'asim are being brought about because of your chokhmah, they're intertwined, then it's a win-win situation. I'll give you an example. This is a use it or lose it kind of deal. It's really what this is about. One of the things I do in some of my teachings, I teach Ivrit. I teach Hebrew. And sometimes it's official, in a structured way, or sometimes it's just, someone needs help with something in Hebrew. And one of the things I tell people, this isn't true just about Hebrew, it's true about everything in life, but especially language, that if you learn something new, you learn a new word or a new phrase, you are almost for sure going to forget it if you don't use it. You have to use it. You have to make it an effort to put it into conversation. And as soon as you start using it, it becomes part of your vocabulary. You can have a list, and I see this with kids in school all the time. You have a list of 25 words, and you learn it for a test. Or you even forget Hebrew. You're learning you're in high school, you're post-high school, you're learning for a vocabulary test in English. Incontrovertible means this, and sufficient means this, and peripatetic, now these are certain words that pop in my head, I don't know why. Peripatetic means this. Fine, and you learn it, and you spit the information back out, but there's nothing that's backing it up afterwards, you're going to forget it. Same thing is true here with chokhmah, with wisdom. When you build your wisdom, that it will endure because you're putting it into practice. So meaning when you're masim, when you're putting it into action, you're actually doing it, your chokhmah will be enhanced. It'll be strengthened, not re-strengthened, be strengthened, and your chokhmah will endure as well. Interestingly enough, I'll share with you one line, put it on the screen here. Because the author of this Mishnah is Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa. And I'll tell you at the end of Masechet Sotah, if I get on the screen, there. Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa was known for his amazing, not just his actions, but being what's called Na'ed Doresh Na'em Mekayim. I will come back to that. That's on the bottom of the screen. The top of the screen says as follows. This is near the very end of Masechet Sotah. Mishemet Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa. When Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa died, Batlu Anshe Ma'aseh. There were no longer any more people of action. What does that mean? That no one rose to his level of keeping Torah mitzvot, and no one did. Now, there's a whole list of people there that when this one died, there was no more Yirat Chet, there was no more Yirat Hashem, and there was no more whatever. And you can't say that because it's impossible to say there's no more Yirat Chet after so-and-so died. No one else have ever been afraid to do an avera. It's not true. Okay, so when you learn the end of Masechet Sotah, and you're interested to know what that's about, ask me, and I'll give you a little background. But the more important part here is this last line. I should fix this. No, that's right. Yadua, he was known as Na'e Doresh v'Na'e Mekayem. He beautifully or sweetly explained or taught, v'Na'e Mekayem, and sweetly also he kept. What does that mean? It's an expression you'll find in many places. Imagine you go to a person that a person is a smoker, and they decide they're going to kick the habit. I've had friends. It's a joke, of course. They have friends who say, like, I can quit smoking anytime I want. I've quit hundreds of times. I'm good at it. But imagine you're a smoker and you decide to go to a smoking clinic. They're going to help you stop smoking. You sit down in the office, and the guy who's going to help you stop smoking takes a cigarette, lights it, and starts smoking in front of you. He says, listen, smoking is horrible for you. It's terrible for you. It's going to kill you. And you sit there like, what? What's wrong with you? You're sitting there telling me it's going to kill me, and you're smoking. So that's Na'ed Doresh. He's saying the right thing, but not Na'ed Mekayem. But he's not keeping his word. Now, as ridiculous as that sounds, many people live that way. I'm not talking about the smoking part. But you know what? And I know plenty of people like this, and we've all seen sometimes you find some of these people end up on the news. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do this. It's Asr, it's Torah, it's against Hashem, it's Achil Hashem. And they end up doing it themselves. So, Na'ed Doresh Noem Mekayem is a similar idea of being true to yourself and true to Hashem. You learn something, you put it into practice the best you can. You preach it, so to speak. You tell others to do it. You should do it yourself. I heard a speaker the other night on the topic of dementia. And he was talking about certain things. It was for a bunch of rabbis. It was held at Mizrahi Yerushalayim. He was talking about different things and both medical stuff. He's a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, a psychologist who deals with dementia and related topics. And he was talking about some prevention and other ideas about it. And he said, and he's telling us is an everyday. You got to do some exercise. You got to exercise your mind. You got to exercise your body. It's important for you. And he starts laughing. He says, it's a good thing my wife isn't here because she would say, you're not in the Doresh Na'em Mekayem. Because it said, you talk a good game, but you got to do it too. Right? So it's like when I'm teaching my tefillah class, for example, or I'm teaching Satya Shavim, or I'm teaching Pirke Avot, and I'm teaching something, like I got to, I'm not telling you, it's like, this is what you should be doing. Right? That's not how it works. It's the person teaching it has to understand that it has to go to them as well, which I hope it does. So that's what this, according to some, this is what this is. Na'ed Doresh Na'em Mekayem. This is the connection between Chokhmah and Yirat Chet. So interesting enough, this Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa was known as an Anshe Ma'aseh, that when he died, what we would say is the quintessential person that represented the idea of you teach something and you do it. You learn something and you do it, and leading you, of course, to Yirat Chet and Yirat Shamayim, it was Hanina ben Dosa. Another couple perspectives of this Mishnah. We also had said just a few minutes ago, I had said a few minutes ago, that learning Torah that doesn't bring you to some level of Yirat Chet or Yirat Shamayim has value. You can't say it doesn't have value because you're learning Torah, but it's lesser value than learning it and putting it to practice. We already saw that. Limud that doesn't lead to Chokhmah, also, while it's good and it definitely has value, if learning doesn't lead to acquisition of knowledge, it has a lesser value. So let's say, for example, I sit and I learn a page of Gemara. When I learn that page of Gemara for 20 minutes, for 30 minutes, for 45 minutes, I have 45 minutes of merit, so to speak, on my chart in heaven under the column of Limud Torah. Fantastic. But if I got something out of it, that it made me think about something else, or it helped enhance my ideas, or it made me look up other things and grew my chokhmah, now I have a double thing. I have the actual learning the Torah, and that increased my chokhmah. it's now part of my memory bank. It's also part of having to help me put things into action. So we should look at Torah as not just an end into itself, of course, but rather it is a means to an end. And the means to the end is putting it into practice. Shmirat mitzvot. You will find what's one of the beautiful things in the curriculum in Israel of high school. Now, I have a lot of problems with some of the curricula, but one thing that's fantastic is that even in the non-religious schools, there's a requirement for certain sections of Tanakh, and there's a Bagrut in 11th grade and 12th grade in Tanakh, and they learn a tremendous amount. I'm sure many of you either been with cab drivers or bus drivers or sitting next to someone in a hotel lobby who didn't grow up religious, and they're not yet religious, and they have a tremendous amount of knowledge. Especially, you'll find it when it comes to Tanakh, and it's nice, it's fantastic, but they're not putting it into practice yet. So it's like partially there, right? It's partially there, and the point of this particular mission is that it's not just about learning; it's about putting it into practice as well. And it's different from math. It's different from science because, I'm sure you've seen there's a T-shirt that said "Yet another day that I didn't use algebra." Funny thing is, I actually did just the other day. But there's things, unless a person's going into that particular branch of the world, such as being something you need math for, whether you're going to become an engineer or you need science because you're going to go into medicine. Many times the many things you learn in school, that's it. You learn it because you need it for a test or for a bagrut or an SAT or whatever it might be, and then you're done with it. But that never should be the Torah. We say, wait a second. So I sit here, and we're sitting here in Israel, Baruch Hashem, and I want to learn the mitzvot of we're in, we're in Parshat Vayikra. So I'm going to start learning about how Korban Chatat was done. Okay, so I'm not putting that to practice, not even close. First, there's no Beit HaMikdash yet. Hopefully tomorrow, maybe today, this afternoon, Bezrat Hashem. Okay, and even then, I'm not a Kohen. I'm not going to be able to do anything with the Korban except I can shecht it. A non-Kohen could shecht the animal. But what is that? So years and years ago, I heard a wonderful line. There's a very, very famous Rashi. There's a bunch of them. One of the more famous ones, and it's made its way into idiom modern Hebrew, starts in the beginning of Parshat Bahar. So it says in the beginning of Parshat Bahar that from the Har Sinai, then it Hashem talked to Moshe and Har Sinai, and then it starts talking about the mitzvot of Shemitah. The every 7-year cycle with the special things that we have to do here in Israel, Baruch Hashem. It's a wonderful year. And Rashi asked the famous question, Ma inyan Shemitah etzel Har Sinai? He said, the Hashem talked to Moshe on Har Sinai and gave mitzvot to Shemitah. Everything was given to Har Sinai. What do you mean? What's so unique and special? And Rashi gives his answer. But I heard an answer that's different from Rashi, and it really resonated with me. Where were they physically and historically when they went to Har Sinai? They had been slaves for 210 years, or actually 80-something years for real. They went through all the miracles, the Kriyat Yam Suf. The Egyptians are chasing them. They get out of there because of Kriyat Yam Suf, the splitting the Reed Sea. They get to Har Sinai. They get the Torah. They had just been slaves. They're in a desert. The idea of the land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Canaan at the time, was so far remote. Shemitah, even if they went to Israel that day, there was 7 years they're going to conquer the land, 7 years then they're going to divide the land up, and only then they're going to start with their Shemitah cycle and everything else. Years and years and years. It has absolutely, positively no relevance whatsoever. Ma inyan Shemitah Eitzar Sinai. It was irrelevant. It's not like what's the connection? Why does it mention Shemitah? But what's the relevance? It was no relevance whatsoever. Imagine you're sitting in, not you, but a person sitting in a school in New York, and they're in 10th grade, and they start to learn the mitzvot hatluyot ba'aretz, the mitzvot like Shemitah and Trumot and Masrot. Trust me, 99% of the time they're going to be asleep because it has zero relevance in their life, unfortunately, very sadly. And that's the point here. The point of this particular Rashi is to tell us that even when you think there's no relevance, even if you think it's so remote, you got to learn it because, first of all, you never know. First of all, you have to learn because it's the sake of Torah. That's number one, the chokhmah. But just the chokhmah is not enough. The idea we also said before is you want to make sure you put it to practice. So they mention so the idea in your head is that if it becomes relevant, and not if, when it becomes relevant in my life, I will know what to do and I want to do it. So therefore, your ma'asim come first. It's as if you're already doing them. I heard saw a wonderful twist on this whole idea of ma'asim, masad mugubim michochmato, when your actions are greater than your wisdom. And this one really resonated. Mentioned there's a commentary called Lev Avot by an author, I think his name is Menachem Moshe, in the 1600s, the 17th century. And the book's available at HebrewBooks.org. I've looked at it. And he tells the following about what does it mean, the ma'asav merubim mechochmato. He says that's actually geared to speakers and teachers. And it kind of validated something I've tried to do most of my career, if you can call it that. Why is it that you can have two people get up and say the exact same thing, and the one person they're not going to listen to, and the other person they will? Okay, maybe they respect one over the other one speaks a little bit better, but there's something that is missing sometimes when a person gets up to speak, and that's connecting to the audience. Whether they talk over their heads or they talk down to them or they mumble or they make the assumption that, of course, everyone knows the Rambam, the Melachim, and everyone knows what that's all about Shiach. And everyone knows. I don't even have to go into that. I don't need to translate anything. Okay, that's one problem with a speaker. Another time is it's very dry and boring. So how do you spice things up? So the Lev Avot says, Kol shema'asav, all the ma'asim, all the stories that you can tell when that's more than what you're actually, the wisdom you're trying to impart, that's great. What does that mean? Let's assume for a moment I want to teach you a mitzvah, halacha. And I start off by telling you a story. I give you this long story, and then the end of the story I said, by the way, all this whole story just represents this one halacha. Let's look at it Shulchan Aruch together. So you've bought into the story, you're listening, you're getting engaged by the story, the ma'aseh, like as I say, a ma'aseh shahaya, a ma'aseh shahaya, a story that actually happened. It doesn't have to actually be one that happened. But by giving over the story or an illustration, what you're doing then is you're also giving yourself the opportunity, or giving your audience the opportunity to hear it from a different perspective. I can tell you, for example, that I have used, and I did this in the book I wrote, I always try to use imagery when I try to get something across, especially something important. It also helps when you try to tell somebody something that you're afraid to tell them, or you're concerned, or it's like uncomfortable to say. You can give a mashal or a parable. You can actually give a true story. Whatever it might be, when you have these ma'asim, these stories, these illustrations, that helps something that could be potentially very dry to come alive. There are different approaches to learning. Some people are what we call halachicists. It's hard to say that, which means they like to sit and they like to learn halacha. They can take out the Shulchan Aruch. They can read the Taz and the Shach and the Yordea. Those are commentaries in the Yordea. They can learn the Mishnah Berurah commentary on the Orach Chaim. They can take out the Ketzot, all kinds of commentaries. Yes, Natan to David. Very good. That's also correct. Oh, thank you, Judy. And for some, that's like fasted. They can spend all day doing that. But for others, that's very dry. Like, okay, do this, do this, do this. Here's what we explained, how we do this. For some people, it's very dry. For some people, that they thrive on it. And that's either way is fine. As long as you learn the material at some point, that's great. Other people, they thrive on Gemara, or they thrive on learning stories of Chassidut, and it gives them inspiration. Some will like to learn Musar, some like to learn Mesilat Yesharim. Everything you learn is good, unless you're learning shtuyot, foolish things. But everything you learn is good. It builds your knowledge base. But the point here of this Mishnah is, it has to have, the goal is not, I'm going to sit down and learn 20 pages of Gemara. That's not the goal. The goal is I want to learn the 20 pages of Gemara because I want to know what to do. I want to improve myself, my relationship with Hashem. My goal is Yirat Hashem. My goal is Yirat Chet. My goal is to be in fear, and I use that word in quotes, be in awe of Hashem, to not want to do an Avera, not do something wrong because I don't want to disappoint Avinu Shabbat. That's the goal. Okay. I'm not going to go with the next Mishnah right now. We're going to do is we'll stop here. Bezrat Hashem, after Pesach, we'll pick it up with the next Mishnah. We have a number of Mishnah until the end of this chapter. In the meantime, I wish everyone a Chag Sameach, the Kasher. It should be a wonderful Chag. And hopefully we'll have some Besorot. We are in the month of Nisan, the month of Geula, and things that seem to be percolating, and I hate using that word, but I'll use it anyways, percolating right now in Gaza and other places among our neighbors. It looks like we're going there. Bezrat Hashem. Chag Sameach, everybody.
Chag Sameach. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chag Sameach.
Thank you. Great day.